That is the sound of the tropics, recorded live at WMSC, actually, here in Milwaukee. It's on one of their albums. I'm going to put a link to one of their fundraising albums. Welcome back to Honorable Evolution. My name is Marcel, and we are here to celebrate those who have been taking exquisite care of themselves, and so much so that they feed others. And I was thinking about the word celebrity today, actually, this morning, and how, it has celebrate in it. And it's we're honoring people. I guess we're paying attention to people who have done a lot of work in their craft. That's mostly why they're a celebrity, because they stand out in whatever, of course that's not always the case, but you think of someone who's a master tennis player, and, they put a lot of hours into being able to be that good. And so this show is about celebrating people who have dedicated their lives to taking care of themselves. And so today I am honored to be speaking with Gwi-Seok, the artist formerly Gwi-Seok.
Gwi-Seok.
And I'm just gonna start out by saying why that's difficult for me to say, other than I'm a Anglo who grew up speaking Spanish and English, because I know you as Peggy. And you were one of Peggy Gwi-Seok was one of my first Iyengar teachers here in Milwaukee at the River West Yoga Shala. And she has since migrated to Detroit, where she was called. I wasn't sure if you'd stay there, but you stayed. And and so thanks for joining me so much.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I love the concept of this show.
Yeah,
and I'm honored to be part of the conversation.
That's great. Yeah, so something that came to me, and I don't know if this is a good place to start, but this morning I was in the woods and I was thinking about pain and how important pain is to us as beings who are kind of working to take care of ourselves. And what does that bring up for you?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So I think, part of being healthy, part of prioritizing health is to be on a continual path of growth, because health requires constantly evolving, shifting, adapting, modifying, and to live on that edge between stability and mobility, to live on that precipice of the growth edge. And so I think one of the most important things that we can learn and develop and practice is to discern, how far we can go from that growth edge, how far we can go from the precipice. And it's going to be different day by day, moment to moment. But maybe the willingness to prioritize health is the willingness to be on that growth edge.
Yeah.
And there are times when we have to pull way back from the precipice and we have to just hunker down and just survive. And that is also a very honorable place to be. But when we are feeling stable and secure enough to return to that growth edge, then it's definitely uncomfortable and it's often painful. Resmaa Menakem uses the term clean pain and dirty pain. And so I think a lot of what we do in my primary practice, which is Iyengar yoga, but really Iyengar yoga in terms of how we live our lives. So one of the most important things that we can learn is how to distinguish between clean pain, dirty pain, injurious pain, forceful pain, aggressive pain, and just the discomfort of being in a new place, having sensations that are different and new and maybe more intense than you've ever experienced, and being in that mystery, but really being in that mystery in a discerning way, so that we're not just pursuing pain for the sake of pain. We are experiencing discomfort and maybe deliberately putting ourselves into uncomfortable positions uncomfortable shapes,
Oh.
literally, in order to discover something, in order to figure out what's causing the pain,
Mm.
what are the blockages, what's holding me back, where am I where am I working too hard, where am I not working hard enough,
Yeah.
where do I need to put more attention, where do I need to shift my attention, um, what are the places that are preventing me
Mhm.
from moving further? What are the places that I'm abusing in order to try to move further? So those are all kinds of some of the queries that I think we need to use when we are talking about pain, when we're experiencing pain, is to learn how to be really intelligent and discerning with pain.
Mm.
I think that in a way our culture worships pain.
Hmm.
You know that
Really? I was just thinking
no
about how
pain.
much we worship comfort.
Well, maybe the worship of pain is usually in an aggressive and forceful and domineering way. It's a sadistic way, I guess you could say, a
Yeah. Yeah.
sadistic or masochistic way, um, and lots of times we think it's the antidote, like that "no pain, no gain"
Hmm.
motto. Um, but yeah, I think you're also right that our culture worships comfort, especially times like this when there's so much uncertainty, so much upheaval, so much turmoil, and everybody wants to kind of recede back into the familiar, recede back into what is comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we could just stop there, and that like people can just listen to that a few times and unpack it. There's so much
Mm,
there. The
mm,
thing that really jumped out to me, or one of the first things that you said that really jumped out to me, was this balance between stability and mobility. And
yeah.
I see so much of that in my life because I'm very adaptable to situations.
Hmm. Hmm.
Where I've been really trying to focus in on is the stability part of what am I grounded in?
Yeah.
Where am I gonna stick my anchor? And rather than just
Yeah.
kind of, being able to be uber flexible.
Right. Yeah. I guess I see. You could broadly say that there are two kinds of people in the world. I mean, once again, from an Iyengar yoga standpoint, it's like the hyper flexible and the hypo flexible.
Hmm.
And the people who are hypo flexible, people who have like really strong but stiff bodies and limited range of motion, um, they have been holding it together, maybe for generations, maybe for millennia, and often people who have experienced a lot of trauma, um, uh, and people who have had to, wear that armor, literally wear that armor day in and day out for years on end. And so, in order to have that stability in their lives and in their emotional lives and in their physical lives, um, and then, yeah, I also meet people who are like hypermobile in
Hmm.
terms of like not having that grounding, not having the stability, and they're often prone to injury
Yeah.
because there's not an anchor,
Hmm.
there's not a connection to the earth. And so maybe, speaking of earth, that one way to look at it is a balance of the elements. So, from a yoga perspective, we've got earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And so, part of experiencing health is continually developing and tweaking and playing with the balance of all the five elements. And so, then I would say a person who is very stable but stiff has a lot of earth element, and it's probably been necessary for them at,
Hmm.
to some point.
Hmm.
And then the people who are hypermobile,
And
they
it
have,
doesn't, and it, sorry to interrupt, but I just want to
go
pause there
ahead.
real quick. Just, you know, it does, because it doesn't work all the time, doesn't mean you need to get rid of it, right?
No, not at all. Yeah, because we really need both. We need all that five
Yeah.
elements.
Because like
Um,
like we see something about ourselves that is not working. It's defective. We don't like it, and
yeah,
then our mind has, oh, we need to get rid of that. I need to stop that, right?
Yeah.
But it's worked. You said so. I mean, you said it's served a purpose over the time.
Yeah. I think that part of my moving from Milwaukee to Detroit was uh, to disrupt that stability within myself,
Mm-hmm.
because I was at like a very stable place in Milwaukee, but I knew that there was still so much more I had to learn. And so moving to Detroit in 2013 was prioritizing,
Yeah.
was deliberately creating instability
Yeah.
so that I could learn what I needed to learn. Um, and um, and part of moving to Detroit was changing my teaching style, frankly, because what I encountered in Detroit, especially when I was like doing classes with my neighbors and doing community-based
Mm-hmm.
classes, that that the people of Detroit are such survivors. They've been through so much,
Mm-hmm.
and um, so to open up physically is terrifying
Yeah.
and painful. And so I had to figure out how to create a very stable learning environment where people would only need to go as far as they felt safe going. And I feel like, to be really frank, with like white middle class, upper middle class students, I can push,
Okay.
and to some, in generally speaking,
Yeah.
and for the most part, they're willing to go along with it. But what I found was when I'm working with people who have experienced communities that have experienced a tremendous amount of trauma,
Mm-hmm.
including poverty, violence, um, generations of institutional racism, white
Mm-hmm.
supremacy, um, and their water's being shut off, and
Mm-hmm.
their home is in foreclosure. I mean, there's so many things,
Layers and
and not to
layers.
say that everybody in Detroit is in that
No. Yeah.
situation, but definitely, when I was teaching in my neighborhood on my block to my neighbors, a lot of my neighbors were experiencing some of those issues,
Mm-hmm.
and so I had to learn how to really meet them where they are, not push so hard, open the door for them to enter in their own way on their own time, and and just like titrate that experience of discomfort and pain,
Mm-hmm.
because um, people who've been traumatized, people who have uh, been in marginalized communities, are constantly in discomfort,
Yeah.
are always in pain,
Yeah.
always. And so it doesn't. We don't have to artificially induce it through an asana.
Would
You
you
know.
say that you've seen that in folks who come from the majority culture who have experienced trauma in their past and come to yoga, come to Iyengar, that they also, it has to be titrated?
Yeah, but see, I think that maybe what I'm hearing from you, and I might be making assumptions myself, but I would say of myself and maybe people like you that um, I have been lucky to have had lots of experiences, lots of support
Mm-hmm.
in working on my own traumas and issues and hurts and concerns, and I have been lucky to have, I've have grown up in a pretty stable home environment, and access to education, and lots of resources, and so yeah, everybody comes into the yoga classroom with their own, ghosts, their own baggage, their own traumas, um, but the the capacity that each person has had in their life to work with these issues and concerns and traumas
Mm-hmm.
and baggage varies tremendously. And I think that when you're a survivor, when you have just been getting by for decades, for all your life, and for generations, then healing has not been a priority.
Yeah.
Health has not been a
Yeah.
priority. In that context, something like yoga is feels like an absolute luxury.
Mm-hmm.
And so, not just yoga, but any kind of healing modality, it's not something that a lot of people who have been marginalized can identify with.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really why. Are you familiar with the term healing justice?
No.
Oh, Marcel, I hope you will really look into this, especially as you work on this blog, not blog, but podcast,
Yeah.
because it's very beautiful, revolutionary framework.
Yeah.
Um, it started in the mid 2000s with a woman named Cara Page and the Kindred Southern Healing Collective,
Okay.
Black queer healers in the South, and they developed this framework of really joining the social justice movement with the work of healing,
Okay.
and recognizing that really without healing there is no justice, and we cannot really create justice without healing. And so really bringing together the needs of healing and making healing modalities available
Mm-hmm.
to the people who most need them,
Yeah.
but tied with social justice.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not spiritual bypassing, it's not just healing taken out of context, but healing in the service of collective liberation,
I love it.
healing in the service of creating the world that we want to live in.
Mm-hmm.
Not just about, not just a self indulgent kind of luxury for people who can afford it, but really, how do we liberate each other?
Yeah.
How do we, and also understanding that healing justice is intersectional with all forms of justice, racial justice, economic
Mm-hmm.
justice, uh, uh, all of that.
That's beautiful. I
Yeah.
I think that Coral Centro in Milwaukee has done some amazing work around that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I definitely think that Coral Centro is along those lines.
Yeah. Wow. So where do we go from here? Because I think you're touching on some hugely important topics of of giving away this this gift of health, finding ways to give this to people who really who could really benefit from it.
Yeah.
And
Well, I'll just tell you a story right now of what's going on in Detroit, and what's on my heart right now
yeah.
is, of course, Detroit is one of the hubs of the protests
Mm-hmm.
for demanding police accountability and defunding the police in
Mm-hmm.
order to refund uh, other institutions and other structures that are going to really create community safety
Mm-hmm.
rather than more violence. And so on Sunday night at the protests, and I go maybe once a week, but Baba Baxter Jones, who is my friend that I take care of, he's a disability justice activist and
Okay.
elder in our community, and he's been going almost every night. And anyway, what happened Sunday night, neither of us were there, was as the marchers were walking back, they were finishing up their march, they were walking back to the parking lot, um, uh, their starting point. The police kettled them in. They blocked them in, front and back,
Hmm.
on their route home
Mm-hmm.
in order to provoke them. And one of the police cars ended up driving through the crowd and injuring people
Wow.
and nearly killing people.
Hmm.
I mean, very close to killing people. But luckily, there were no deaths, and but it was a very violent attack. You could see it on social media,
Mm-hmm.
and so the community is re-traumatized. There was also some um, several nights of police brutality in late May, early June, and then the police kind of backed off
Mm-hmm.
and decided that they would give the protesters some space. But Sunday night it became violent again, and so the community is really traumatized. And what I am really feeling right now is that the activist movement is very much in need of healing. That in order to be effective in our activist movements, we need that stability and grounding. We need that. We need to balance the five elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And when we are out on the streets marching and yelling and protesting, it's just all fire.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and that will burn you out, of
Yeah.
course, literally.
Yeah.
And so and then it also provokes the fire from the people that you are protesting.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And so then the police, were getting antagonized, and they struck out. They struck at the protesters, and so how do we create? I guess my question to myself and to my community is, how do we create lasting, healing, effective change? Without sacrificing each other's lives, without causing more injury, without causing more harm.
Mm-hmm.
And so really feeling that need to, and I've been kind of wrestling with this all morning, like, what can I do with what little I know, but the tools that I have to help bring this balance to my community so that we can sustain ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and not get killed, and not burn out. And so that's what I would like to see more of in our
Mm-hmm.
community is how do we bring this concept of health, this concept of healing justice
Mm-hmm.
to our people
Mm-hmm.
in order to create
Yeah.
beautiful, effective, lasting change,
So it's
to
not just
create
a
the world that we
bonfire
want to
that
live in.
goes out after a few months.
Right, right, yeah. Um, and to be able to translate this energy into real momentum
Mm-hmm.
that's going to make structural, institutional, permanent changes.
Yeah. I think it's a wonderful thing to be chewing on.
Yeah, I feel like the activist movement, we just go all out, and then uh, and lose that balance of what
Mm-hmm.
does sustained change look like. I guess Iyengar yoga is a good metaphor.
Yeah.
For me,
Yeah.
I always come back to Iyengar yoga as a metaphor, and so um, in terms of asana,
Uh-huh.
it would be a matter of consistency,
Uh-huh.
practice, uh, imagination, creativity, trying new ways, trying new setups, new props,
Mm-hmm.
new sequences
Mm-hmm.
for how to approach a certain injury or blockage or imbalance, um, uh, tapping into each other's ideas and resources, consulting with my mentors and teachers,
Mm-hmm.
going back to the source. Um, so those are some ways that I would approach it from an Iyengar yoga standpoint. And so, how do I apply that to the rest of life? That's what I've been
Yeah.
wrestling with.
And if we could kind of take a pause there, and if you, I'm wondering, for those who are listening and don't know what we're talking about when we say Iyengar yoga, How would you describe Iyengar in terms of a practice that is unique?
Well, I guess what has really kept me in the Iyengar yoga community, Iyengar yoga movement, is what I love most is the depth. It's a bottomless well
Mm.
of wisdom.
Hmm.
BKS Iyengar, who passed in 2014 at the age of 95, almost 96, left this just immense body of wisdom
Hmm.
about the body and how and when I say about the body, it's not doesn't even begin to scratch the surface. He said the body is our first prop,
Mm.
which sounds really strange. But what he meant by that is that we use the body in order to access consciousness. And so we're really shaping consciousness through the wisdom of the body.
Hmm.
And that depth that he brought and all the tools working through asana,
Hmm.
but really working beyond
Can I
asana.
pause you there real quick? So
Yeah,
okay, so I'm one of the things I'm trying to work out is the way we talk about the body and the mind, because the way we do
yeah,
it, we automatically distinguish the two as if they're separate.
that's right.
And
Yeah.
and you know,
And Guruji famously said, BKS Iyengar said, where does the body end and the mind begin? Where does the mind end and the spirit begin?
hmm,
There are no distinctions,
hmm,
and that's the way he really approached the practice.
yeah.
Um, and so that depth. I mean,
Yeah, you told me
BKS Iyengar.
you told me a story, or actually in class once you told a
Mhm.
story as you said it. You suggested that someone released their hypothalamus or their pituitary gland. I forgot which one it was.
Oh, right. It was a story about my mentor, Lois Steinberg,
Okay.
and who was in Urbana, Illinois, and she was in a pose. She was in India,
Hmm.
and she was in a pose, and we're in the practice hall. Like there's this huge practice hall at the Iyengar Institute, and everybody is there in the morning practicing together, but separately, but together in the same room. And BKS Iyengar, he just walked past her, and he said, "Release your hypothalamus." And so there's a way that he could penetrate
Yeah.
with his eyes, with his body, with his senses, even into other
Hmm.
in other people's bodies. There's a way that he could penetrate
Yeah.
the layers and see the ways that we can work with the body in order to um, get deeper
Hmm.
access. And so that's what keeps bringing me back to Iyengar Yoga is I
Okay.
haven't found any other methodology that
Yeah.
goes that deeply
Hmm.
and that invites each of us to develop those skills that were sort of kind of supernatural in someone like Vikiya Iyengar, but really accessible to all of us
Yeah.
to practice and develop
Yeah. Yeah.
and
And
become better at.
for anyone who is listening and hasn't taken a course or class in Iyengar yoga, what it looks like is you might do 5 poses the whole class, maybe less, right?
Sometimes, but
Yeah.
I mean, often it's very active. It can
Yeah.
be a lot of things. It can be, yeah, it can be very slow and deep, or it can be very quick
Well, especially
and still
especially
deep.
the
Yeah,
fundamentals, because you're really learning what you're supposed to be doing.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, um, you know, so you're in an asana, and from the outside, it might look like, oh, you're just doing an asana, but the instruction is designed to guide each practitioner in really going more and more deeply into the body and developing the sensitivity, awareness, reflection, in order to really to understand yourself, understand what's going on in your body, and then to be able to allow that effect to go through all the layers,
Yeah.
from the physical to the physiological to the mental to the emotional to the spiritual.
Yeah.
So hopefully that teacher is helping you to go deeper and deeper into the awareness of yourself.
Yeah.
And to me, that awareness of the self is the key to shifting society.
Mm.
Because if we are each a hologram, if we are each a fractal of the greater whole, then as we become more conscious, then we are affecting our communities,
Mm-hmm.
our families, our constellations,
Mm-hmm.
our neighborhoods, our cities.
Yeah.
And so that's really what uh, we're after, what I'm after, and what healing justice is after, is to create these shifts within our collectives,
Mm-hmm.
but working through the individual. Like if I am stuck in my traumatized, wounded self, and I'm not able to go anywhere or do anything with that, then I'm not going to be of very much use to others until I can find that capacity within myself
Yeah.
to move
Yeah.
out of that stuckness.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess you could say Iyengar Yoga is a tool through asana to help us move out of our our stuck
Well,
areas.
and in though, P.S. If you are stuck, it's
Yeah,
very helpful to those in your
yeah,
tribe if you lean on them and ask for help.
absolutely. Yeah,
And that gives so much. But I mean, I have had to work on that to see it that way because when I'm as a white male, I'm kind of been um, conditioned that I just kind of should rely on myself, even though
right.
I'm really propped up by all these other, invisible forces and privileged. But so, yeah, there's just so much giving in allowing someone else to share with you. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's beautiful. Yeah. And I think, especially during this quarantine, we've been spatially distancing.
Hmm.
And so we don't, we might not have as much human contact
Hmm.
as we normally do. But yeah, that interdependence, I think that is something that is also, a huge priority for me. And to me, what I see as a key part of community health is that cultivating the interdependence.
Hmm.
And so, in an asana, how the body parts are dependent on each other, and then taking that fractal larger into a classroom situation or a community,
Mm.
how we depend on each other
Yeah.
um, in a class, in any community, and really learning how to lean into each other, and also to the spiritual beings, the nature spirits,
Hmm.
our ancestors.
Mm.
This season it's uh, almost July now, and so it's peak berry season.
Mm.
Mulberries, cherries are out,
Hmm.
raspberries, um, and so nature is speaking through us and providing us with this incredible abundance.
Yeah.
And so if we can find that abundance in each other,
Yeah.
and in the life that is around us always, um, other humans, but also other life forms,
Hmm.
and invisible life forms as
Hmm.
well. I think that is a huge requirement, um, prerequisite for health.
Yeah, and,
Uh,
along those lines, and what we were discussing earlier, one of the things I think a lot about in terms of mindfulness practices, whether that's jumping rope mindfully or eating mindfully or yoga practices or actual meditation, I think that a lot of why it's so powerful is because it connects us to the wordless. Our species
mhm,
our species has not always had language, and for the
mhm,
majority of the time we've walked this planet, we haven't had language. And so
mhm,
connecting to that,
mhm.
which the deer have and the bears have and we
Yeah,
had, is
yeah,
really powerful. And as I understand it, yoga really is the point of yoga, if we're going to be very myopic here, the point of yoga is to get to meditation, right?
right. Yeah, the point of yoga is total liberation, total absorption with the divine,
Okay.
total absorption with ultimate consciousness, ultimate reality. And so yeah, and so it's wordless. So we're using words to get ourselves into that wordless
Hmm.
place, that wordless space. And often what I tell students is, notice what is happening here. Don't try to put words to it. Just notice and feel and observe.
Yeah.
And and that, yeah, sometimes when we try to assign words, it's so limiting, and it
Mm-hmm.
shrinks
Mm.
what the hugeness, the vastness
Yeah.
that we are encountering, that we are entering, gets shrunken when we try to quantify it into words.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so let me ask you a question, Marcel.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, how do you see, as a um, white cis man,
Uh-huh.
how do you see the role of, or the possibility, or the necessity, um, the relationship of uh, white body supremacy with the health of the community and our cities and our country,
Mm-hmm.
um, in this time and place?
Can you say white? Tell me what white body supremacy
The
means.
so the term I use is white body supremacy
Yeah.
in so as distinct from just white supremacy. I feel like white supremacy is a pretty abstract concept,
Okay.
and so, but
And
if we really bring it down to the back into the body,
okay.
and and I'm it's a term that I learned from Resma Menakem, who uses that to indicate that it's that white supremacy is enacted on a physical level on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not just a matter of this vague system of white supremacy that's out there,
Yeah.
but it's this very grounded day-to-day experience of the white body as the standard
Yeah.
by
Yeah. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
other bodies are
Yeah. It's
compared.
not some nebulous concept. It's your.
No,
We can. Yeah. Okay.
it's your embodiment.
So the relationship
Yeah.
between that and
Health.
health.
Health of the self and of the community.
Yeah. I guess where I go is I think about uh, how much profit there is in pain,
Uh-huh.
and how um, I don't know. I guess I go to thinking about just the food that folks who are struggling, and a lot of them mostly marginalized, are going to for comfort and entertainment, and to
Hmm.
take care of pain is really benefiting the 1%, or not just the 1%, but so I don't know. I go to food. I don't know. I
Hmm.
guess I don't know if I'm hearing your question right though either.
Hmm.
I think there's a lot there that I'm not hearing.
Yeah. Well, so I guess one another way to look at it is that um, white body supremacy is a huge impediment to health.
Hmm.
Like as long as we have white body supremacy, my community in Detroit is is not going to experience real health.
Mm,
An 80% black city that has a white mayor
yeah.
and a white police force
Yeah.
and white bankers
Hmm.
and white um, real estate developers and all of that on
Hmm.
down the line. My community, the 80% black community, is barred
Yeah.
from experiencing true
Yeah.
health.
Yeah.
And so yeah, what is the role? Let's put it this way: what is the role of the conscious white body in a situation like this?
Mm. Yeah. I think it's enormous. It's enormous. I was listening to Richard Pryor recently, and
Hmm.
he talked in his stand up. He was talking about being in I think in Lagos, Nigeria, and it was the first time he was in
Uh-huh.
Africa. And he
Yeah.
said he would see people who looked like people he knew from his hometown. I don't know where he's from originally. I think Peoria. He's from Peoria. And he said,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's so and so. That's the guy who I used to play basketball with. Like he would kind of like, oh, that's that guy, right?"
Hmm.
And then he said, I would see people like really successful in their position in Nigeria, but at home their counterpart was like struggling, right? And he goes, "Oh, I saw this diplomat," and he goes, "That's Harold the wino," and he goes, "That's what you're supposed to be.
Wow, that's so
That's what he was supposed
profound.
to be."
Yeah, that's so profound. Hmm.
And so I just think about, what's available to me, and what do I see as a potential. One of the things that I love about cities where there are Black people who are able to have financial success. Okay, like Chicago, like Atlanta is I don't, yeah, I guess I don't know. I don't know how to say it without. I don't know how to. I'm going to say it, and maybe there's some wrong things in my opinion here. I'm okay with that. I don't know if I've ever
Yeah,
really talked about it
yeah,
too much out loud. I've talked about it, but like I'll go see a jazz concert at the Chicago Symphony Center in Chicago, and
hmm,
it will be filled with Black people. Okay.
hmm,
And I go see that. I go to a concert like that in Milwaukee, and I don't see that. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
And so I think about, like, what I grew up seeing as people who looked like me, potential for, um,
uh-huh,
what that allowed for me.
hmm, hmm,
Okay.
yeah,
So, and I'm complicated because I present as white, but I've never
hmm,
accepted that about myself, because
hmm,
my father's from Peru, and
hmm,
he's Italian Peruvian, and so he looks Latino, and
hmm,
I don't. I never have looked like him. So I grew up kind of with my family in Milwaukee, seeing them as Peruvians, Italians, and like kind of wanting that, not
hmm,
wanting what I'm showing here. So
yeah,
it's things I've been thinking about in different ways for a while.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I hear you what you're saying about, people, um, people of color being able to, live in freedom
Hmm.
and have economic stability and have access to arts and culture and
Hmm.
all of that. And I mean, there's a tremendous community of artists, Black artists, people of color artists here in Detroit as well. And at the same time, I feel like, yes, we need access at the same time that we need to be recreating society
Yes.
so that you don't need to be able to afford a $50 ticket to go to the cultural center, so that um, we're not dependent on capitalism. You don't have to make fifty or $100,000 a year in order to have certain kinds of
Hmm.
experiences. Um, so that's one of
Hmm.
the reasons why all our classes right now online are donation. It's
Hmm.
all what we call community gift because
Hmm.
we don't want it to be. No, you don't have to make $50,000 a year to be able to afford
Yeah.
yoga class once a week.
Yeah.
You can make $10,000 a year and still come to yoga class
I love it.
2 or 3 times a week. It yeah. How do we create a society so that's not contingent?
Yeah.
Um,
And
so that health and healing are not contingent on your income.
that's what I want to. That's what this is about. What I'm doing here
Hmm.
is kind of, let's look at what are we doing that is screwing us up, because
Hmm.
we've really deviated from our natural trajectory in our evolutionary course, and in the last, especially since we've industrialized, it's just like we're just like all out of whack in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
can we return to some of the more
Hmm.
natural things, and how can we evolve on purpose, honorably,
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
ourselves and our greater
Yeah.
community?
Yeah. Well, Grace Lee Boggs. Grace Lee Boggs is one of the main reasons why I moved to Detroit in the
Okay.
first
Yeah.
place. And uh, a friend told a really great story. She described how when she first met Grace, she was like 16 years old, and she was in a summer program that Grace and others had organized. And when she met Grace, the first thing she said to this friend Marisol was, "The most important thing you can do is grow your own food." I mean, so mundane
Hmm.
and yet so revolutionary.
Yeah.
And so um, I hear so much in that statement. The first thing I hear is the most important thing we can do is reconnect to the earth. And be part of the earth's rhythms
Mm-hmm.
and be rooted
Mm-hmm.
in a place on the planet and put roots down in that place. And then this whole concept of food justice, food sovereignty,
Mm.
is so important. I mean,
Very.
it is really, and less so now, but when I first moved to Detroit, it was still really very much considered a food desert, which is a very offensive term, because there's so much life going on, but the big box groceries, and not that the big box groceries should be our source of food,
Mm-hmm.
but that for most people in the modern era, that is. And so the big box groceries had left the city, and so the importance of growing your own food was very palpable and very visible and very obvious. Um, and I think one of the really great things that's come out of the pandemic is that so many more people are gardening, because they're at home, they have time, and they see how important it is,
Yeah. Yeah.
to have access to your own food. I would add not only growing your own food, but foraging. I'm super
Oh
into
yeah. Are you
foraging.
really?
And
I love
yeah,
that.
and
Yeah.
I think it's so important to know,
Uh-huh.
the native plants, what's growing in the alleys, what's growing in the parks, what's growing in the side lots, and to know the plants, to understand the
Mm.
plants, and to enjoy the plants,
Mm-hmm.
harvest them, use
Mm-hmm.
them as nutrition and as medicine.
How did you
And
learn?
how did I learn?
Yeah.
Harvey Taylor and Susie?
No.
Harvey and Susie are longtime Milwaukeeans, and
Okay.
Susie was diagnosed with cancer many years ago.
Okay.
And she decided that she would take it upon herself to heal herself. And the way she did that was uh, by changing her diet radically
Mm-hmm.
and eating from the earth
Mm.
and eating wild plants.
Okay.
I mean, among other things.
Yeah.
And so Harvey and Susie were really into wild plants and foraging, and so yeah, they were my first teachers.
Okay.
And then I've just kind of continued to ask around and research
Okay.
and experiment.
Yeah.
And so I think, yeah, growing our own food,
Yeah.
foraging for our own food, it's
Yeah.
so human. Like, think about,
Yeah.
our ancestors from thousands of years back. And my mother actually was the first
Mm-hmm.
forager I knew.
Mm-hmm. My
And we would be
grandmother
like,
too.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's so maternal,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so connected to the earth.
Yeah.
And yeah, we would just be like driving or walking, and she'd say, "Stop, look at this,"
Mm-hmm.
and then she'd make us pull, harvest plants with her, and of course, as a kid, I absolutely hated it. I thought it was so
Yeah.
gross and so embarrassing. But now, what I would do to be able to go foraging with her again.
Yeah.
And she passed away in 2001.
Uh,
Um, but yeah, being in harmony with the earth, living in interdependence with the earth,
well, and
and
sorry, the question too that really has inspired me to almost learn about foraging is like, what would you do if all of a sudden the food supply stopped?
exactly,
How would you
yeah,
survive?
yeah, and we would have to lean on each other. We would have to um, learn so much, and then. But I think that becoming food independent, having that food sovereignty, is the
Mm-hmm.
first step to dismantling capitalism
Hmm.
and creating other economic systems. And so when I no longer need to buy food, then what else can I no longer buy? I no longer buy clothes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I did have to buy shoes the other day. I got them used, but I hate shopping.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I've even been I sew, I make things,
Yeah.
and I've even been making my own underwear. This is like really exciting and revolutionary because otherwise it's sweatshop, right?
Ah.
It's sweatshop, and
Yeah.
like all this stuff is made in
Yeah. Yeah.
sweatshops.
Yeah.
And so, how do we stop exploiting each other? How do we stop exploiting the planet? How do we stop
They,
putting such a heavy
and you're
carbon
not
load?
talking about Bikram yoga, are you?
Oh God. I was wondering what would happen to Bikram yoga post pandemic, because that is a total, super spreader situation
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
to be locked in a heated room with all
Hmm.
the windows closed into this tiny. I don't
Yeah.
know what's going to happen.
I'm gonna
This
assume
might
something real
be it.
quick here though, and I think I'm right. And I just want to acknowledge, and I want to honor a man in BKS
Mhm.
Iyengar who had a lot of power and didn't abuse it.
It's true. I mean, yeah, he was extremely ethical, moral, upstanding
Yeah.
human being, and what he said was that he said, "Don't judge me on the mat, judge me off the mat.
Yeah.
Look at what I do off the mat.
Hmm.
That's what
Yeah.
really matters. That's what really counts."
We.
I mean, I will say that there is you know, a very strong anti-guru movement going on.
Hmm.
And I have mixed feelings about it.
Yeah.
I think that it is true that there have been lots of damaging cult leaders that have done so
Hmm.
much harm.
Hmm.
But at the same time, when we um, cut ourselves off from tradition and lineage,
Hmm.
then what is our grounding?
Yeah.
We started off the conversation talking about grounding and talking about earth element. Then what is our ground? And also, I feel like if I didn't call myself an Iyengar yoga teacher, I feel like I would not be giving adequate credit
Hmm.
to where my learning has come from,
Yeah.
and the wisdom and generosity of my teachers. Um, on the other hand, I feel like, it's very much now that Gita ji, his daughter, had passed away 2 years
Oh,
ago.
I didn't know that.
That was a very sudden, shocking death. We did not anticipate that at all.
Hmm.
But with both of them gone, there's a freedom right now,
Hmm.
where there is space to create some new uh, ways of operating.
Yeah.
And that's exciting to me because I'll tell you what, one thing that's happened since the George Floyd murder is that the inherent racism of so many of our institutions has been revealed.
Mm.
They were always there,
Yeah.
but either we just like put up with it, or we decided to uh, look the other way, or um, and so I will say that the Iyengar Yoga National Association is in major transition right now, in a good way. I won't even call it transition. I've been trying to provoke them into transition, but they are in a deep
Okay.
state of self questioning,
Good.
and
Yeah.
in the process of making some hopefully major institutional
Yeah.
changes. I think that's happening on a lot
Yeah.
of levels,
And
and
and,
so
and I think people should. I'm hopeful that people have the right to transform. Right. I mean,
yeah,
I think some things that in a month or two, I'm probably going to look back on and think, wow, that was really not forward thinking or progressive or whatever. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I don't know about you, Marcel, but I feel like the past 3 months, I feel like has been like 10 years of growth for me.
Okay. Yeah.
I
Yes.
feel like it's been a real
Yes.
hothouse.
Yes. Me too. I
Yeah.
was talking to a friend
And
yesterday about something, and he was giving me counsel on something that I'm struggling with, and after like a few minutes, I had to stop him and said, "I can't chew on anymore. I'm chewing on so much right now." You
mhm,
know.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been so much upheaval that and so much time to ourselves
Hmm.
that I feel like I'm in graduate school again,
Mm.
in terms of like the
Hmm.
learning curve, the
Yeah.
steepness of my learning curve.
Yeah.
And it's kind of amazing to me. Um, but but then now the world, if each of us is going through this tremendous transformative time, then our institutions have to kind of catch up with that.
Yeah.
Our systems, our organizations, our institutions have to kind of catch up with that new vibration.
Mm.
So anyway, one thing that's so BKS Iyengar, among his controversies, social media can blow anything up in a very short period. And so one thing that came out was um, this video of him teaching in a very harsh, punitive way to a student on stage at a convention, at a conference. And it became this sort of meme of like, oh, look, this is the culture of Iyengar yoga. No wonder teachers are so mean. And, it's a culture of abuse and you can't reform it. And it became, and it was, I had really mixed feelings about it because I do feel like there is sometimes abuse. There are stories of abuse, and most recently, one of the senior teachers was decertified. I don't know if you know any of this, but Manusa Manos in San Francisco was decertified last year for literally decades of sexual abuse and misconduct.
Yeah.
I mean, and the people in power knew about it. The senior teachers knew about it.
Yeah.
And decided not to do anything about it. And so finally, after many years, he was called out and decertified. And so then there was a sort of movement of, he learned that abusive behavior from BKS Iyengar, that sort of thing going on. And so what I'm doing, my sort of personal task, I feel, is to recontextualize Iyengar yoga. So, BKS Iyengar, he was born in colonized India. He learned Iyengar yoga through Krishnamacharya at Yogashala for Indian boys. And it was kind of a warrior school. It was all adolescent boys. And it was like really like building them up and building them up to be warriors and leaders.
It was
So
in Pune or?
No, this was in Mysore in southern India.
Okay.
And then he was sent to Pune because they needed a teacher up there. And he was only like 17, 18. He was very young. And so then he learns this very strong athletic practice and very quickly realizes that most people can't do it. And then he starts adapting, using the bricks, using the straps, using the blankets.
It's the prop yoga for sure.
Yeah. So he started modifying and adapting the yoga to the people in front of him. And but then the Europeans
what came
and
first,
Westerners,
Iyengar yoga or the folding chair?
Yeah, that's something you'll have to take into meditation.
Sorry.
But so then he teaches this really, this very strong, assertive warrior style of yoga to Westerners, and they love it. But then they kind of adopted. So he was saying how he encountered so much racism when he started traveling outside of India, and how it was ironic, and how he had to learn how to be. These are his words: how to be the slave driver to the slave driver. So that is how to teach, how the colonized is being hired to teach the colonizer. So what is he going to teach them? And so but then that very strict, strong teaching style was adopted by Westerners and became kind of the norm.
Yeah.
So I feel like my generation's task is to really understand the context of what Iyengar yoga developed out of, and then to adapt it to our current time and place.
Yes.
So that harshness is no longer necessary. But how do I bring that stability, strength, and firmness without force, without aggression, without shame?
What if you can't, though? What if you can't? What if the warrior has to come too?
It does have to come out sometimes, yeah. And and I don't hesitate. I don't hesitate when it does need to come out, but I try to be really mindful of who I'm speaking to,
Yeah.
because in a way, there's also this like when a student comes to you, it's not just them as an individual. They're walking in with their culture. They're walking in with their ancestors.
Yeah.
They're walking in with their traumas,
Okay.
and so
Yeah.
and their parents' traumas and grandparents' traumas.
Well,
And so, go ahead.
but okay. So one of the things that I struggle with, and I
Hmm.
think that we struggle with as a global unit now is and I think that that's part of what's been given rise to this Trumpism is like I want to be respectful, but I also want to be respectful of I want to be respectful of others, but I also want to be respectful of myself. And
Yeah,
so if I'm constantly concerned with how it's landing, then it's
yeah,
like kind of like this walking on eggshells. And I'm not saying that,
uh-huh,
and I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate here.
yeah.
Okay.
I think it's a matter of really honing our skills. And I'm sure that you experience this as a therapist, honing our skills so that we can really meet the person in front of us and bring what is needed in that moment.
Yeah.
And so that's going to vary depending on the person and depending on the
Mhm.
day.
And it's all,
And
but
so,
that's also assuming that we know what's needed.
yes, but I think, see, this is where, like, from an Iyengar yoga standpoint, um, I guess what my training is to see where the physical imbalance is to look at a body and to understand where the physical imbalances and blockages are. So, but then the thing is, sometimes you can't go after that first class, you know?
Hmm.
So, like, for instance, somebody might come in with very stooped, rounded shoulders.
Hmm.
But to tell them to stand up straight and roll their shoulders back, then they're probably not going to get it the first class. Probably have to start with the feet.
Mm.
Probably have to start with the legs,
Hmm.
and then kind of work your way up.
Yeah.
And so, but I think that, yeah, I think my task when somebody comes to me is to look and see and feel. Okay, this is where the blockages are. This is where the
Yeah.
imbalances are,
Yeah.
and kind of like experience them as a totality, and then figure out a starting point. Um, and be willing to take time, to be willing to take weeks and months and years, in developing that consciousness and addressing those imbalances and blockages that I am witnessing.
Yeah.
I can only assume that they've come to me because they want to address that.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess
um,
I also want to get at that, if we're going to be, if this revolution that's happening now is going to have lasting effect, lasting change, we cannot throw the baby out with the bathwater.
uh-huh,
The war, if we get rid of all the warrior
uh-huh,
energy,
yeah,
I'm concerned about that because it
yeah,
offers us some things,
yeah,
and some,
yeah.
and just
Oh,
like,
definitely.
just like, people say, oh, the protesters, I agree with them, but they shouldn't be violent. Well, maybe that's what's needed right now,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah,
and so,
yeah, yeah. Once again, I think it's a matter of really, if we come back to the elements, to see what are the elements that I need to bring to the situation,
yeah.
and to be able to access all those elements, each of those elements. Um, and whoops, I think that's my phone or something.
I
Did
don't
you hear
hear.
that?
No.
Yeah.
Uh-uh.
Okay.
Well, I just want to also, as we kind of wind down here, I want to mention that, I find that for me, Iyengar yoga really provided a foundation for me and my body, and
Uh-huh.
uh, and so I can't recommend it enough for someone who's interested in yoga, and wants to get, if you go to a general yoga class, flow vinyasa class, and you look around and people are doing all kinds of weird things, it's because they don't know, and Iyengar is the only yoga class I've ever cried in.
Mm. Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it was so damn beautiful. It wasn't a
Mhm.
painful cry, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I think that it's designed to really open you up in whatever way that, however far you're willing to go that
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very profound, um, and it really addresses all the layers of the self.
Yeah.
Um, if you have a skillful teacher, to work through the physical body in order to uh, open up all those layers.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we touched on so many things that we're going to have to eventually meet again to talk some more.
There's a lot. There's a
There's,
lot
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are such a giving, beautiful, radiant being that I when I talk with someone like you and think and reflect on the work that you're doing where you are, I am so grateful that we have someone like you on this planet.
I was just thinking about how, especially during this pandemic, thank you for that, Marcel, that and when we're not, out with our people and in groups, that it's been very easy to feel isolated. And I was thinking about, if uh, on my deathbed there are even 10 people who claim that I made a positive impact on their lives, and then it's completely worth it.
Yeah.
Completely worth it.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, thank you for that, Marcel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will post links to your website and your blog. And if
Hmm.
people are interested in following up with you, your contact information is there.
Hmm.
And otherwise, you got some really heartfelt writings that you put out there.
Hmm. Yeah.
And we obviously touched on other aspects of health, what it means to you, and you're a creator. And
Hmm.
so thank you for being
Yeah.
here with me today.
Yeah. And good luck with this blog. I love the idea of it, and I look forward to listening to the other episodes. Thanks for doing this.
That is one badass yoga nun. Gwi-Seok. Peaceful warrior, maximizing the minimum. Got some words that are in part inspired by our discussion and also inspired by what has been an anthem for me the last few months. And that is a piece written by Ernest Kabir Dawkins and Kahari B, the words at least, and it's about 15 years old, and it is a story of the Chicago 7 trial that took place in 1968. And Kahari B talks about system and the status quo, and I think about that as these invisible forces that act on especially people of color to allow for a bland world of restriction. Think of gravity. Think of muons, these invisible forces that act on us that we can't necessarily see, but they're there. Some days, it seems that our species is just writing one long obituary for the roaches or the corn to read, whoever we bequeath this rock to whoever our fossils fuel. And then I steep in the waters of someone like the Bad Ass Yoga Nun, Gwi-Seok, and I'm reminded that there is another way, that we can evolve honorably, and that this isn't even our rock to bequeath. I'm also reminded of the words of the wise W.H. Auden, who said, "We are here on earth to help others. What the others are here for, I have no idea. System says that to help others, we should feed them and pick up the litter, the blunt wrappers, the soda and the malt liquor bottles that we see strewn throughout system cities. It does not say, question the system that allows for a world where the only solace afforded some the only freedom afforded some, the only relief afforded some, was once wrapped in those containers, in those blunt wrappers, in those malt liquor bottles, in those soda bottles. And mostly a crime. In these momentous times, my invite is that we do our work to question the system and to support agents of change who are working at the systemic level, a la Color of Change, a la Real Justice PAC, two organizations that are doing some beautiful work that I'll put links to below.